Hello, travel junkies and frequent flyer mile nerds. This is Paul, and welcome to the very first episode of the Travel Punks podcast. My inaugural guest, lawyer, world traveler, expat, and owner of Seaboss Coats. Check it out at seabosscoats.com and on Instagram and on Facebook, my friend Carla. We talk about her expatriation to London, the Joker movie, and the difference in race relations and safety across the pond. Ladies and gentlemen, Carla of Seaboss Coats. So, my friend Carla, whom I met from the Samba School and who now lives in London and has her own apparel company. Am I right about that?
Yes, indeed.
I'm always excited to talk to people who have expatriated. Now, it's a somewhat different experience for you because you actually have British citizenship. Am I right?
You're correct. Right.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. You were born in the UK at a time when being born in the UK was enough to afford you citizenship, but now that's no longer the case. Am I right?
Right. I think they changed the law I'm not going to say when they changed the law. Your listeners will just have to look that up. Because if I tell you...
You're making us work too hard, Carla.
If I tell you the year...
People don't listen to podcasts because they want to work.
I'm not going to give away my age that easily.
Oh my God. Yeah, I used to play the age game a little bit too, but now I'm just like, fuck it, I'm old. I don't care. But you have the mystery. No one has any idea how old you are. You are ageless. It's something.
You'll have me talking enough. It will all be revealed in due time.
That's the spirit. Not since we've got coffee, which obviously gets the conversation going.
Yeah, indeed.
No, it doesn't.
Alcohol
alcohol gets the conversation going. That was what we like to call a bad joke. Apparently, I have a ways to go until I'm Joe Rogan.
You speak for yourself.
I will do. Oh, coffee gets you talking?
Absolutely.
Okay. This might need a second or so to brew. I got Colombian because we reconnected over Colombian food just a couple of days ago, and I wanted to get you face to face because I feel like a lot of people do podcasts by Skype or Zoom or some sort of online application, which gets you video FaceTime. I think I might appear on an Austin-based podcast by a guy named Hurdy Burke called Austin Biz Buzz. And I think you should too, but I guess you're not an Austin-based business anymore. You're a British business, which might be even cooler. I can't keep track, but...
As of now, the business is incorporated in Texas.
Whoa.
It's an LLC here.
All right. Do they even have LLCs in the UK? What do they have?
They do have LLCs there.
Oh, copycats. Or did they invent them?
That's another thing your listeners will have to look up.
Because LLCs are weird. They're like corporations, but if you ask how they're different, the accurate answer is we're not really sure. Because the reason that corporations are as controlled as they are, and some would argue that they're not controlled enough, but the reason they're as controlled as they are is because there's decades or even centuries worth of case law. And if you invent a brand new entity, which I think LLC was done a couple of decades ago, there's just no precedent. So it's kind of this new thing that no one really knows how to deal with. And as a result, you can kind of get away with more. And I don't even necessarily mean that in a bad way, although certainly bad actors could take it in a bad way. And there's a movie that Steven Soderbergh just put on Netflix. I'm forgetting the title, but it stars Meryl Streep and it's about shell companies. Have you seen that?
I haven't.
It's interesting.
Okay.
It's kind of good. It was about some Panamanian shell company that got taken down in the 2000s as a result of something or other. And he goofs it up. He goofs around with it a little bit and has what's his name? Two really good actors, Gary Oldman and Antonio Banderas. Kind of narrating their scheme, intercut with different stories of companies that interacted with them, with the through line of Meryl Streep playing a woman whose husband died in a boat accident where the company that insured the boat was set up by one of these shell companies and didn't end up paying out. And I think it gets a little preachy at the end, but it's a pretty good movie. I don't know if you even watch a lot of movies.
I do. I'm a film buff, actually.
Yeah. What was the last thing you saw?
Oh, goodness. The last thing I saw was The Joker for the second time.
Yes.
So I saw it on opening
just the other day
in London. And then I had to see it last week because I ran into a friend who said, I haven't seen it yet. I really want to see this. Would you like to see it with me? Of course.
Now, I'd mentioned when we met that you were picking up a little bit of a British accent, partially because you're tired of being asked about Trump, which is the first question out of most people's minds. But the second question has to be, what do you think about Joker? Maybe not. Well, that's the question in the U.S. Outside of the U.S., it might be, what do you think about Trump? I've gotten that a lot. But in the U.S., it's, what do you think about Joker? Because it made such a splash. It was such a kerfuffle. And people think that the media was pissed off about it because it shows them in a bad light. Other people just think that it promotes violence. Has it gotten that kind of attention in the UK, or did it just get accepted for what it was?
I was one of the first people to see the film. And when I saw it, I mean, there was I think there's kind of a distaste for horror films in my circle of friends. I don't care. I love Joaquin Phoenix. I will see everything he's in, horror film or not.
Oh, he's awesome.
After I saw this film, I said to every person I know in the mental health realm, they ought to go see this film. When I saw it with my son a few days ago, that's my friend with whom I saw this film, my son. I said, wow, there are so many things in here that I didn't see the first time. And I gave him my new take on the film, and he said, Mum, now you ruined the whole thing for me. I was watching it with one perspective, and now you come in with your second perspective on the film, and now the movie's horrible.
How dare you,
like,
Mom?
You just spoiled it. I hate that perspective.
With your second perspective, what were you thinking?
My second perspective was this entire film. For anyone who's not yet seen The Joker, but my perspective was the whole film is kind of taking place in his imagination, because the very last scene has him in an asylum, and he's relating all of this to his doctor, and he says, I'm laughing, but you wouldn't get the joke. And the entire film is his joke, pretty much, with some exceptions. Some things that he relates, or that are related to us, the viewing audience, we can assume actually are real. But throughout the film, he's asking, is this real? Did this really happen? And that's a clue to us that that's probably a hallucination, something that's happened only in his mind. The entire romance with his neighbor, for example, that's one thing.
And that reminds me of American Psycho, which I watched again pretty recently, and I've watched a bunch of times. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but you know what? The movie's like 25 years old. So if you haven't seen it yet, I guess this is going to be a spoiler podcast. But there's an implication, without giving away too much, there's an implication that the character made up the whole thing. He's witnessed making a lot of murders, and there's evidence at the end that he's been hallucinating it, or just imagining it, or idealizing it. And one of my friends was recently saying that they thought that kind of spoiled the movie for them. And I did get that attitude about it the first time I saw it, but as I watched it more times, I started to think maybe he did actually do the murders, because part of the point was that part of the point of the movie was that everyone in that era, at least, and maybe today, but everyone in that era was expendable and replaceable and unnoticeable, because his murder victims were like prostitutes and homeless people. And even when he murdered his peers, vice presidents at financial firms, they're expendable and replaceable too, based on the fact that they all look the same, they all have the same job responsibilities, which seem to be none, and they all mistake each other for each other all the time. So even one of his peers would go unnoticed because they were so interchangeable and replaceable. So I think either interpretation is valid, that he committed the murders versus didn't commit the murders.
Right.
But you don't like horror movies in general. You like Joaquin Phoenix movies.
I like good movies.
Me
Whether
too.
they're horror or not.
Me too. And there's a subculture that loves any kind of horror movie and just revels in the cheesy and bad ones. And I can relate to that a little bit. There's certain cheesy bad movies that are so bad that they're good, including in the horror genre. And some of I have guilty pleasure horror movies that's like, I know this is a bad movie, but it just hits something with me that I love it. Like the movie where, the found footage horror movie where they go it's called As Above, So Below. And they go into the catacombs of France, and it turns out that they're on a journey into hell. And they shot most of the movie in the catacombs of France.
I've been there.
Yeah?
The ones in Paris, anyway.
Yeah, that's the ones of France. Yeah, it's in Paris. It's the largest mass grave site in the world, I think.
It's amazing.
There's more bones there than there are in the people living in Paris. Am I right?
Goodness, there are lots of bones, and it just goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Way deep underground, and it almost don't go there if you are claustrophobic.
No kidding.
Because it takes a long time to get down there, and then it takes a long time to get out, and there's nothing but bones on both sides of you.
Wow. Just lining the walls.
Pretty much stacked up on top of each other. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Really.
I would probably go there, but they actually shot the movie there. It's a found footage horror movie, and I love the lo-fi-ness. Like, technically speaking, it's a movie with a lot of problems, but it didn't matter because it just really worked for me because the lo-fi concept of an ancient catacomb burial site having a secret passage that leads to actual hell, and the lo-fi way in which they shot it and represented it. I mean, it wasn't good, but it was so cool. I just recommend that movie to people. It kind of informs some of the things that I'm trying to do when I try to make my little movies. It like had a real impact on me.
You're making movies?
I am, yeah.
Tell me about the movies.
I'm working on a short script which came from the novel that I wrote, which hasn't been published, which came from the full-length screenplay that I wrote a couple of years ago. So I wrote it as a novel because I figured a novel was cheaper to produce, but it's challenging to get a book promoted if you don't have a platform already. And then I went to the Idlewild Film Festival, which is where my dad lives. It's a little mountain village in Idlewild. He and his wife retired there to a little cabin. It's really great. And they have a pretty prestigious film festival. It's only 2 or 3 hours outside of Los Angeles, and they do some good stuff there. And so I went to the sessions that were put on by industry professionals, and then I missed most of the features. I just went to all the short subject presentations where it's like 90 minutes of one short film after another. And this is probably going to sound like a knock on the filmmakers I saw, but I was like, I can do that. Just like hubris to the max. And I was like, all right, it's a slog getting this thing published. I'm going to get a short film, and I bet I could take it to some film festivals and keep the story alive that way because I'm pretty all in on this story. So I'm going to try and shoot it at my friend's house up in Hutto near up northeast of Austin. My friend's got a great house that would work as a location for it, and we're going to try to do that in January, which is the interim time of it's now early November. In like 1 week, I'll be going to Japan, and then when I get back, I'm going to be here for a while, and then I'm going to go home to California for the holidays, including Idlewild, where my dad's cabin is. And then I'm going to be back here in Texas, and a week and a half later, I'm going to shoot this thing, hopefully.
How big a cast?
3.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, a teenage girl, a teenage boy, and a monster.
Oh.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong, right? Plus me. It's going to be way too much fun.
Well, that's the best way to do it. You keep your cast small. You keep your expenses low.
Yeah.
So.
We were going to try and build a set into a theater, what's it called? A soundstage. But I started reconceptualizing it partially because that would be expensive. And more to the point, it's my first short film, and I'm trying to get experienced people involved as much as I can, but it seemed to me like building a set in a soundstage was going to be not only expensive, but just as likely to fuck up. Just as likely, I was just as likely to fail and still expend the money in a soundstage. So I started reconceiving the notion of the kind of nightmare realm that the main character ends up in. it was just some offhanded thing that the director of photography said, and I was like, well, wait, what if we change some things and use the same set, use the house that we're shooting in? Probably gonna hear that bird. We're outdoors. It's a very nice day. Nice day in November in Austin. But it was partially from Stranger Things, where they would just make horror sets out of their current sets by adding some vines and changing the lighting and adding a bunch of dust in the air, floating in the air, and changing the noise. Some other things you can do are... There's a flock of birds heading up above us. I love it.
I think we're in an Alfred Hitchcock scene.
I hope we are not. That's how HEB looks when summer starts to wane and there's all those birds and they could just kill us all and make up the reason they did. It's really terrifying. But another thing you can do to make familiar settings scary is to up the shutter speed of the camera, because normal shutter speed includes a certain amount of motion blur that we're used to seeing. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you eliminate that motion blur, everything looks a little too clear, a little too in focus, a little exposed. And I also I don't want to talk about all the tricks, I'll take forever, but I also want to use a trick that I will steal from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Right.
Another great film.
Love it.
When Jim Carrey's trying to hide from the memory erasers and memories that have already been erased.
Right.
He's shot very close up on him with only a spotlight, and there's darkness on the periphery, and every now and then the camera moves and there's something scary, like a woman that was in the previous scene, but now her face is gone.
Oh, right.
And it's thematically on point because the memory's being erased, but it's also really scary. It's like, holy shit, there's a bitch without a face. What do I do? So I'm taking my cues from that a little bit to find lo-fi, lower priced ways of doing the things that I want to do. And As Above, So Below is informing some of the choices I'm making as I'm evolving to fit my budget constraints, and Eternal Sunshine and Garfield comic strips, a couple of other things. I go in a lot of directions. It
sounds exciting.
Could be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could be fun.
I hope you screen it at that film festival.
Me too. And I gotta find some film festivals in London. I hear they have those.
Absolutely. It's a film town, theatre town too.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Idlewild Film Festival, is that a competition film festival?
Yeah, there's prizes.
Okay.
There's prizes. I want to hear more about life in London, though.
Okay.
You've changed apartments. Tell me about it. You said it's a small space, which is de rigueur for London, as I understand.
I'm in the process of moving flats.
I'm gonna depress the French press right now.
All right.
And we're gonna talk, like, as I'm doing French press coffee right now, we're gonna talk about how bougie travel is and how we can fight back against that, because I remember you mentioned it and I really connected with it. But go ahead, I keep talking.
I'm moving from an exorbitantly priced flat to one that's 1/3 the price.
And I can relate to that too.
And it's perhaps 1/3 the size.
Yeah. So it makes sense.
Absolutely. In fact, where I'm moving is a normal neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Where I currently live is a hotel district.
Really?
Nothing but tourists walking up and down the sidewalks with their roller bags. That's not real.
So it's probably a noise complaint, but it's definitely not real.
Yeah. So I'm going to be moving into just a normal, regular, attached home, neighborhood.
Well, you want a normal neighborhood.
Absolutely, that's what I want.
Or else, why live in a place?
Within 2 blocks of where I am, there's a supermarket, 2 supermarkets.
Nice.
Tons of restaurants, dry cleaner, bakery, hardware store, and within an 8-minute walk, or less, depending on how quickly I'm walking, there's the underground station. So, and at the end of my block, 3 buses just, go up and down. So public transport is available, it's everywhere, and it's something that I do miss, just being here in Austin for a week.
Yeah, I love public transportation, and trains and buses get a bad rap, but there's a way that we do it that is just so bad. And some fun things that they do in Europe, like you can get on the bus or the train without having to wait in line to pay your fare. You can pay your fare on a machine on the bus.
Right.
And you won't even necessarily get your ticket checked. There'll just be a ticket warden who who checks, and if you don't have it, you get a fine.
Right?
Yeah.
Very true. I'm looking out the window here of your beautiful studio, and I see so much space. There's grass, there are trees, there are no people walking around. This is life in Austin, Texas.
Right.
You hardly see anyone walking around because people are in their cars. You'll see people walking around all over the place in London, and you won't see a lot of space between the homes because there are a lot of people in London and they have to make efficient use of the space. There are tons of parks, 8 major parks right in town. They're beautiful. That's where you go. You may not have your own private garden at home, but the parks are public and you go out and you enjoy them when the weather permits. And the weather permits more often than you might expect.
Do you like being surrounded by people?
I love it. It's not for everyone. Lots of people.